Greetings and salutations, my friend. I have been sick in approximately 2 weeks now, and my throat is getting sore again. It just keeps coming back for some reason and it won't go away. Yet here I am making another YouTube video, because why the hell not? You know, sometimes I get these comments on my videos or emails sent in my direction coming from parents of trans-identified kids. And what I mean by kids here is a very broad spectrum of age, basically anyone who has a parent, you know. If your kid is 30 or 40, well, they're still a kid, right? But I was thinking that I never made a video that was directed at that particular part of my audience, and that is going to change today. So if you are a parent of someone who recently, or perhaps not that recently, either came out as trans or decided to transition, and you are feeling either lost or confused, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to think, well, I think you might have stumbled on a right YouTube video, and I will do my best to help you in this situation you found yourself in. And if you're new to this channel, you might be thinking, what exactly qualifies me to giving this sort of advice to parents? Well, I used to identify as trans. I have detransitioned several years ago, actually, and I'm living as a man right now, which is my biological sex. So because I lived as a trans woman for a couple of years, and I had parents around that time, and still do, obviously, you know, hanging around, and because I detransitioned, I know a lot about the red flags that you can see when it is not a right choice for someone, and how to tell when it is not a right choice. I have also talked to the parents of transgender kids and understand the struggle they're going through. Back when I was young, I could only see it from my own perspective as a trans person, and you know, as you grow older, you develop more sympathy for the parents as well. You know, and even though I don't have kids of my own, I can put myself in their shoes and understand just what the hell is going on from their perspective. And it can be a hard and confusing time for a parent. That is understandable. Long story short, I think, and this is a generalization, obviously, but I would say that the parents of trans-identified kids fall usually into those 4 categories. Now, the first 2 are relatively easier to work with, and you have an easier time communicating with your child if you fall into those 2 categories. The latter 2 that I'm going to mention, they're a bit more complicated, and greetings and salutations, I guess. We're back where we started. And then it goes in a never-ending circle of sorts. So the first category is the sort of parent who wants to be understanding and tolerant and open towards their trans child. And those people are usually good parents by all means, but there are some flaws to that as well, but we will get to that later. Now, the second category, and I believe it's the most common one, is the sort of parent who doesn't have anything against trans people, who doesn't have anything against his or her kid being trans, but they might feel a bit confused or lost, like, how did this happen? Why did my son feel like he wanted to be my daughter? Or why the daughter felt like she wanted to be a son, and so on. Those parents may feel worried about their kids' future, what it will be like for them living in a society as the opposite gender. They may also be worried about their health, both their physical and mental health, or they may possess very little information about gender identity or gender dysphoria or transgenderism, and they want to know more but they don't know how. It's a complex, distant topic that they never thought about, and it's just one big confusion. What is going on? Now, these last two categories, like I said, they're a bit more problematic because they make it much harder for you to get where you're supposed to be as a parent and handle this responsibly. So the first of those is the sort of parent who wants to have a trans child, who's just hoping, oh, please God, I hope my kid will be trans. Now, why would they do that? Well, mostly to use their kid to wave their own virtue around. Oh, look how tolerant I am, look how accepting I am. Oh, I'm such an amazing mother, father, whatever. I'm practically a god. And the final category is the sort of parent who's kind of disagreeable or may not be a bit aggressive in their attitude towards their own child. They may treat every conversation about this subject as a debate of sorts. They have to prove that, no, you're not a man, you are a woman, and your pronouns are she, her. You know, I will go in depth on all four of those categories and what I think you should do depending on where you are. Regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, I think a good place to start for every parent is to ask yourself this one simple question, and that is, what is your goal here? Set a clear goal for yourself. What is that goal? Do you want to understand your kid better, to understand why they feel the way they do, why they made that choice? Is it to possibly stop them from making the biggest mistake of their life? Is it to establish better communication between the two of you? Or maybe it's to save the relationship, to have a relationship at all, because there are cases where some trans people want to talk to their parents. Or is it to prove to your kid that you are right and there's only biological sex, there's no such thing as gender, you cannot be the opposite sex, and so on? Well, I think that's a question only you can answer, and it boils down to one very, very important question, and that is, what is most important to you in your relationship with your child? And I think it's a good idea to take your time. It's a lot of wind. And I think it's really important to take your time and think about it before you do anything else. So let's start with the first category, and let me tell you, I think the parents in this category are usually good people. They want the best for their kid, and they want to do everything in their power to make their child feel accepted and at ease, and make the whole process of transition easier for them by being there for them or being understanding. And you know what, I get it, because transitioning is not an easy process, you know, no matter who you are. So there's a lot of positives coming from being this sort of parent. Where the flaw lies is that those parents can be sometimes a bit uncritical towards certain red flags that perhaps your child is making a mistake. And I'm not saying that your child will make a mistake or that they are making a mistake. This may be the right choice for them, but there is a chance that it's not. And sometimes there are things hidden under the surface, such as trauma or not being able to accept yourself as homosexual, and this is just a way to escape from that, to transition. For me, both were the case, and that trauma can vary from anything like bullying, as was in my case, not feeling like you're man enough, and the other type of trauma is sexual trauma, usually coming from assault or abuse of this sort. This, in most cases, is more likely to happen to females, right? I don't think we have to talk about why. When you're little girl, hits puberty, her body starts changing, boys starting seeing her as a sexual object in her own head. She's still a kid, and it's a really difficult world to navigate to when you're being seen in that light. And sometimes some girls want to escape their own womanhood, their own femaleness because of that. And we need to have sympathy for that, and we need to know what to look for. So what I would say your job is, if you're a parent of this sort, is to find out whether it is the right choice for them or not. Talk about them honestly. The good thing is that you probably already have a good relationship with your kid to begin with, and because you are so tolerant and accepting towards them, they most likely trust you, which will make this sort of dialogue much easier. Why? Because they will not question your motives or see them as malevolent, as would be in the case of someone who till now has been more skeptical towards their decision, right? So your situation isn't actually that hard. Most of that work you have to put in is to understand that people transition for different reasons, people develop gender dysphoria for different reasons, and that transitioning is not always the best option, but it may be the right option for them. You know, everyone is different, and I never said that transition is not the right choice for anyone. And I think, and it is something I wish my parents did, is to help me understand that and to help me guide me into that, to help me find out what is the right path for me here. Obviously, you know, every trans person is different as well, so some trans people, some trans kids will be easier to communicate with than others, right? Just as is the case with the parents. Some parents will be much harder to talk to than some others. You know, like when it comes to communication, some people are really good at it, some people are really bad at it, but most of us fall somewhere in the middle there. And irregardless of where you fall there, I think that we can all put some work into it to become better at communicating and establishing better relationships with people around us. Now, category number 2. Those sort of parents usually have a lot of questions. They don't necessarily know what to think, and a lot of the time, and in most cases completely unfairly, some people will qualify those parents as transphobic. I don't think you are transphobic just because you are worried whether it is the right choice for your kid. I think that's a responsible approach, right? I would say that there are two main differences between the first type of parent and the second type of parent. The first type of parent will have a hard time realizing that one may transition for the wrong reason. This latter category will have a much easier time there, because that is something you probably already questioned or thought about. Now you just need to actually do some reading and research into what are the signs that it is a wrong choice for someone, but also reading the cases where people have been happy with their transition, because then you know what to look for in your own child's behavior. The second difference is that the first type will have a very easy time communicating with their kids, but if you are the sort of parent who's feeling confused and lost, and you don't know why this has happened, why your child is transitioning, and you don't have ill intentions by no means, but you don't know what to think, to be honest, right? And well, your kid will sense that, right? And you will be most likely, at least on surface, less supportive. That's how your kid will read you. There's one thing you really need to understand, that if in the mind of a young trans person, and I'm not saying every young trans person, because there's a lot of different sorts of people out there, but I've noticed that it is the case a lot of the time, and that was certainly true in my case, is that the way the mind of a young trans person views the parents is very binary. It's either a supportive parent or not supportive parent. And you don't have to be transphobic, you don't have to be a bad person to be categorized by your child as non-supportive. It's enough if you just don't affirm everything 100%, right? There's just this very clear line between the two there. And your child will be skeptical towards you and towards your intentions because of that. You haven't done anything wrong. I want you to know that you absolutely haven't done anything wrong, but this is just how is the case. But the good news is that something can be done about it. And what I think is a good place to start, and this may seem counterproductive or counterintuitive to some people, but is to actually affirm their gender identity. And I know what you might be thinking. Oh, I'm just another work person. Maybe, you know what, maybe I am. If that's how you want to classify me, go ahead. I really don't care. But the main reason why you should do that is to establish trust. And you might be asking yourself, well, why should I be doing that? And well, a good reason is to, just show respect to your own kid and respect their gender identity. That's number one. But number two, and I think that's also very, very important, is because you don't want to alienate your kid. Because the more you alienate them, the more distant they will become, the less they will trust you. And if you think you have a good reason to think that, you know what, perhaps my kid might be making a mistake, maybe they're actually gay, maybe because it's of bullying, maybe because of the assault, maybe it's, million other different things that could be the reasons there. Well, you want your kids to understand that you think there might be a good reason. And for your kid to see that, it's not a straight line that you can just go to. You have to walk a much more complicated path in order for your kid to see things from your perspective. And I think first you should attempt to see things from their perspective in order for them to see your perspective. Because if you understand their perspective, you know exactly what your path towards that goal should look like. And now, how do you approach this subject? How do you let your kids know that this is something you are worried about without them being judgmental towards you and thinking, oh, you're just transphobic? Depends. Well, you know your kid better than anyone else, probably. And if you don't, well, I think you should. Some kids may have a much harder time opening up and speak to their parents if they don't feel exactly at ease around them, at least around this subject. I remember very well just how hard it was for me to talk to my mom about this, and talking to my dad about it. It's not just hard. I was playing on like super hard extreme nightmare difficulty. But like I said, you know your child better than anyone, and if you think that this is something your kid wants to talk about, don't push the subject. Allow them to come to you and talk to you. If you keep pushing, you may come off as a bit desperate and you're thinking like, what is your goal here, right? You don't want to come across as that. So just wait till your kid approaches you about this, and in the meantime, focus about something completely different, and that is maintain a good relationship with your child, and this has nothing to do with the transgender stuff. Ignore that, just hang around with them, spend time with them, go out to a restaurant and eat together, do some fun activities, make sure to just have a good time together and spend a lot of time as a family. This programs is something very important in your child's mind, that is that they feel accepted, and to you it's like it doesn't really matter whether they're trans or not. To them, you're just their kid, and it doesn't matter. This is the solution, the recipe for you to go from, in their mind at least, from category 2 to category 1. And after this much longer track, you know, you had to take to get there. That's where you can get to the point where you can establish this sort of dialogue. And you shouldn't start this dialogue with telling them why you think that this may be the wrong choice for them. Instead, go there slowly, you know, step by step. First, you should try to attempt to understand why they transitioned, and if they trust you, they will be honest with you. And when they are honest with you, you may notice red flags there. If not, that's great, because that may mean that there are no red flags, but it also can mean that there are red flags, but that your kid is just not disclosing them as openly. In that case, it's necessary to dig a bit deeper, but it takes time, and the better relationship with your kid you establish, the easier time you will have to get there. But be prepared that it takes time, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. Now, next thing I think is very important to talk about with your kid is just to what degree do they wish to transition. And you might find out that if they are on hormones, or if they are considering taking hormones, you might find out that through dialogue that perhaps they can be happy just dressing as the opposite gender. Maybe that's what they actually want. Perhaps they may just be happy being in a homosexual relationship. That may be the case. Or they may actually be happy when they're on hormones, right? But make sure to talk to your kid about side effects of hormones. And not in the sense that, oh, you should stop taking those hormones because it says here that these and these symptoms can occur. Don't scare away their kid, because that may seem to them that it's not their health that you're worried about, but rather that you want them to detransition. Remember that their health should be a priority for you, and that's why I think you should definitely put an effort if your kid wants to have any sort of surgeries, and especially when it comes to the bottom surgery, also known as sex reassignment surgery or gender reassignment surgery, SRS for short. The amount of possible complications that can be life-ruining, and some of those complications can be lasting. It's a really, really long list, and I got the bad end of that stick, because I went all the way. I had the surgery, and I wish someone would have stopped me around that time, you know, but well, that never happened, and I am where I am. And you don't want your kids to be experiencing those complications, right? So doing your best to make them realize that they do not need a surgery, I think it should be very, very important. Not because you don't want them to be happy as a trans person, because you don't want them to be happy as a woman or a man that they feel they are, but because you don't want them to suffer from those complications. And I think that's what should be most important. And now we are getting to the third category, the sort of parents who want to have a trans child, who are so happy about it. I think that some of the parents who fall in this category, they might actually be the ones deciding that their kid is trans rather than the kid themselves. They may be saying, oh, my boy likes to play with dolls, you know, and wants to play with Barbies, so now he's a she. Now she's my daughter.
Does your mom say you have to be LGBT? No, I think she's what I want to be, but
Go ahead, Lex. Go ahead. Keep talking. Say what you're saying.
My mom doesn't matter if I am gay or lesbian or any of that. She doesn't care. All she cares about is that I'm a part of it. And if I'm not a part of it, she'll try to convince me to join it. Cause
What? Are you segregate though?
Facts.
But you may have completely missed the point there. you know, that is not a sign of your kid is being trans. And there are some really, really stupid pictures circulating in Google. If you Google gender dysphoria, this here is one of the first pictures that shows up, and I talked about this previously on my channel, but things like how your kid wants to dress or what they want to play with are not signs of being trans. You know, your kid, he may just like playing with dolls, or she may like playing with cars. This is 2024, you know? We shouldn't have those strict gender roles. So that is one thing you should definitely realize if you are this sort of parent. And, you know what? Stop caring about your status as this super woke person. Forget about that. This is about your kid. Find out whether they actually identify as trans, or if they just like to play with certain toys, if they are more feminine or masculine than their peers. That's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. And if you are able to realize that, you might actually move from category 3 to category 1, which is a good place to be. Unfortunately, a lot of parents in category 3 are so far gone that there's just no hope. And it's like with anonymous alcoholics. What is the first step? You have to realize that you have a problem. And I would say that if you are in category 3, if you realize that you have a problem, that's when there is hope. And that's when you can put the work into becoming category 1. But if you are not able to acknowledge that you are part of the problem, well, you will have to put a lot of work into even getting to that point 1 of your journey. And sadly, not everyone will get there. Let's be honest about it. But because I like to have faith in humanity, I think that everyone can change, and that from becoming an insane parent who wants to have a trans kid, you can become a normal parent who just accepts their trans kid. If they actually are trans, and if they didn't actually feel pushed into that category by you. Now, type 4. Just like I said that with a lot of work and effort, type 3 can become type 1. In the same way, I think that type 4 can move to type 2 when right measures are being taken. No, type 4 is very complicated because the question I told you to ask yourself at the beginning, what matters most to you? Is it to save your relationship with your kid? Is that what matters most to you? Or to prove that you are right? And those people can be very ideology driven, you know. They may have this worldview that they think is true. And, you know, it may be. It's biological reality, right? But you have to understand that not every single person views the world in that way, right? And one thing I've learned from interaction with people of different faiths or believers in general is that back when I was an atheist as a teenager, I had this attitude in almost every interaction with a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, is that I have to prove them wrong and I have to prove that I'm right, that there is no God. And I realized just how toxic that became. And looking back at it, I realized that those weren't really friendships. Those were just excuses for me to debate them. And I think that hard debating for the purpose of hard debating is just pointless. I know you have your worldview, you have your views on what sex is and all of that, but just try to put yourself in your kids' shoes and what matters to them. To type 4, even attempting using the preferred pronoun of a trans person, especially their kid, might just be completely unthinkable. You might be thinking, no, I am not going to be lying to them. Type 4 stands firmly by their principles, and sometimes I think, you know, that can be admirable in and of itself. I think sometimes it can also be stupid and pointless, you know. Sometimes you have to go out of your way to get things done, and I think it's in a lot of the cases where the relationship gets broken, you know, when the kids don't have any sort of relationships with their parents. It's usually when the parent is the type 4. Just as much as it is so important for type 3 to realize that they are the problem, as type 4 you have to realize that not everyone lives by your rules, and if you want to convince your kid that they might be making a mistake, which is not always the case for type 4, because that might be more the case for type 3. Type 4, his or her goal is more aligned with, I want my son to understand that he's a son. I want my daughter to understand that she's a daughter, she's a woman. There is no talk about what if it's a wrong choice for you. There may be, but it's less common than in type 2. And that's why I think that type 4 will have the hardest and longest journey out of all the 4 categories, even though I think that type 3 is the one who's doing most damage. Although type 4 can also do some damage, right? They may literally destroy the relationship with their kid.
That's a lot of damage.
Intuition may suggest that the best advice would be to attempt to use the preferred pronouns, to attempt to accept your child as trans, but it's a hard, very long step, right? It's like looking at the stairs, but the first step is like above your head and you have to climb on that, right? Well, if you don't have enough strength in your back and your arms, well, you will have a lot of hard time climbing up that step. Start by, and perhaps you don't even have to use the right pronouns, but just treat your kid as a human. Don't start every conversation with trying to argue why they are wrong, why you are right. Just treat them normal. Have a nice breakfast.
The hell is this?
Hey.
Veggie bacon. We're watching our cholesterol.
Talk about some stuff that you both like, and just like I suggested with type 2, spend a lot of time together. And by ignoring that subject, perhaps it will be easier for you to get to where type 2 started. From there you'll have a much easier time, and you're already spending a lot of time together, so then the type 2 journey will be already easier for you than someone who started a type 2, even though before that there was one hell of a long road to travel. What that does is that even if you are misgendering your kid, if you're otherwise being kind to them, they will, in most cases, they will not disown you as a parent. They will see you as someone who's deeply flawed, most likely. They probably wouldn't trust you, but they probably won't hate you. Why do I know that? Because my parents never called me the preferred pronoun, yet I didn't hate them because they treated me normally, you know, and I think that's a really, really good place to start. It's very important that you realize that it is not about you, it is about your kids, and you have to see things from a different perspective in order to save that relationship and perhaps to be a voice of reason for your child, a guiding force, which is I think it's a parent's responsibility. So yeah, that's basically my advice. And I just realized something. I have this option on my Patreon where people who struggle with gender dysphoria or accepting their sexuality, or who are considering either detransitioning or transitioning, can talk to me on video calls. I decided to expand that feature and include parents of trans kids as well. So if your kid thinks about transitioning or has transitioned recently, you need someone to talk to, I'm here, and go to my Patreon and we can have video calls once or twice a month or whatever you prefer, really. I'm up to it, and the more people I can help, the better. That's the way I see it. I really hope that my video was helpful to someone out there, and if you think there's something I could have done better, or if you want to give me your feedback, or if at some point in the future my advice helped you establish a better relationship with your trans kid, let me know. Come back to this video and comment your story, how things went. I'll be really happy to hear that. And I'll stop here, so have a good day and take good care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao.